So first, the sequence of events. Over the last few days, Mr. Adar Poonawalla, the CEO of Serum Institute of India, the person really who is making Covishield, which is 80-90% of all the vaccines that we have, is in London for the last few days. And over the last few days, he is chosen to give interviews to the Times as well as to the Financial Times, in which some startling claims have been made, which has raised quite a bit of controversy. Let me first quickly take you through what has been said and why these statements have raised eyebrows. So first was his interview to the Times, in which he said that he had to escape to London because of mounting pressure to deliver COVID-19 vaccines. He's talked about getting threats and feeling threatened by bigwigs calling him and demanding that they cut the line and they get their vaccines before anyone else, and how he's finding it difficult to handle that pressure. Remember, Mr. Poonawalla was granted Y category security recently by the central government as well. Now, if that wasn't enough, in his interview to the Financial Times, Mr. Poonawalla also talks about why he thinks that vaccine supplies will be short at least till July. Now, this is not necessarily a new statement. He has said this in an interview right here on ET Now when I spoke with him a few months ago, and he talked about his timeline pretty clearly, that he would be able to reach 100 million doses only by about July. So he's reiterated that, but also talked about how there were no orders earlier. No one thought we'd have to make more than 1 billion doses a year. Now, this has caused the entire controversy because critics jumped on this and said that, look, the government clearly missed the boat. Why weren't orders placed earlier? Where are the orders? The government responded with a press note talking about what orders they have placed, and the latest one, after the ones in March this year, have been placed on the 28th of April. Remember, 28th of April, that means barely 5 days ago, for about 11 crore doses of Covishield, which they hope will come over the next 3 months. Subsequent to that, Serum Institute of India came up with its own explanation, saying, yes, we are working with the government, we have all of their support, etc., and we've had 26 crore doses in all. So today we're going to talk about not when did we order, who is right, who is wrong, but the fact that even with 26 crore doses ordered, really, do we have any visibility on the kind of vaccination drive that we need? The supply-demand equation is just so skewed right now, one has to wonder how we will go forward. To speak on this today, I'm joined by K. Sujatha Rao, the former Health Secretary, Government of India. K. Srinath Reddy, President, PHFI, joins us on the show, as does Dr. Arvinder Soin, Chairman of the Medanta Liver Institute. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us today. Dr. Reddy, let me start by getting your view on the entire vaccine question. Now, we'll play out also for our viewers an interview I did today with Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, where she clearly said, if it was me, I would have started bulking up and producing vaccines from August of 2020, even at risk. Do you think that's the opportunity India missed?
Well, actually, we should have planned our vaccination drive with some intensity and urgency when the cases were quite down in early January. We should have utilized the period of 3 months for driving our vaccination forward. Assuming that the regulatory clearances were given for 2 vaccines only in early January, on January 2nd and 3rd, even then prior orders could have been placed. But I believe when we're really looking at now what's the current scenario of 18 plus, the entire adult population to be immunized, that is 75% of India's population. Even if you look at the 18 to 44 group that has been added later on to the earlier prioritized groups, that is 595 million, which means that you require about 1.2 billion doses for this new group alone. And we can't afford to ignore the most vulnerable group, which is 45 plus and above, and the people with comorbidities below. So I think we do need, firstly, to ensure that we have adequate vaccine supplies. And secondly, with limited supplies currently available, we continue to need, we have to continue to maintain a focus on the most vulnerable people, that is the 45 plus, as well as the younger people with comorbidities. And the 18 to 44 group without comorbidities, perhaps we'll have to wait a little longer.
No, so how much longer? Just a follow-up, very quick follow-up question there, Dr. Reddy. With the calculations that you've put out, we need over 1 billion doses. And if from July, Covishield will be produced or Serum Institute will produce 100 million a month, don't forget that they also have other contracts they've signed which they're not fulfilling right now. So how long does that take then? Because do we have enough clarity on how much Sputnik we'll get? How much Bharat Biotech will be able to produce?
We really do not know, but we also know that 850 million doses of Sputnik were to be produced in India by at least 6 manufacturers contracted for the international market. If we can now persuade that a large proportion of that must remain back in India, then at least we'll have access to a substantial amount of the Sputnik vaccine. And of course, the other vaccines which are under development and under trials, if they pass the regulatory review, let us say by June or July, at least 1 or 2 of them, then we should start seeing their production as well. But I think at the moment, the position is not clear. We are depending upon the 2 vaccines already approved for regulatory, with permissions, and also the Sputnik V, which has been given clearance. So we have access to 3 vaccines for the next 2 or 3 months.
Sujatha Rao, your comments on what we've seemed to do with our vaccine plan. So the point number 1 is that we definitely did not stockpile vaccines. I'm not sure if it's because we thought a second wave wouldn't come. Even if a second wave didn't come, the plan was always to immunize a large part of the population. So what really were we waiting for?
My reading of the situation is like this. One is, even today, we don't really have a vaccine plan, and I will come to that later on. But I think if you go back, as Dr. Reddy said, after January 3rd, when the DCGI gave permission for 2 companies, we placed only orders for 200 million doses. So the companies need a bigger order to really think big and roll out the manufacturing capacity. Capacities don't come overnight. They need to know that they're firm orders for some quantities, and that's how they plan. So that was not possible for them when the government itself was giving orders only for 200 million. The second thing, the main reason for such a small order, perhaps, was because there was a sense of complacency. We cannot deny that, thinking that we've got over the COVID danger, and we have won the battle. And so, it's now only a vaccination, which we can do aram se, cover the whole population systematically over the next few months. And that comfort feeling we had. We did want to vaccinate, but we didn't feel the urgency of it. And neither did we see that little period of low caseloads as a window that we had before the second wave hit. The third thing is why I'm persuaded to believe this is because Pfizer came before these 2 companies to the DCGI and asked for an emergency authorization, but it was not entertained, and finally Pfizer went away. I mean, there were reasons why not, but anyway, the short and long of the story is that they left. And Johnson & Johnson also applied sometime later. They were also not given permission and so on. So we didn't really pursue any other candidate vaccine very aggressively except these 2. And if you see the manner in which out of this small 200 million, we gave away 66 million for on a goodwill and commercial sales and goodwill sales to our neighbors and other countries. So there was, I think, a failure to appreciate the importance of this vaccine and the time to really cover. Having said that, when you use the word national plan, I really don't think we've still done the basic worksheet of what is our population, what is the target population, how much is the vaccines that we need, and what is the production capacity with these 2 companies. Had we done that, we would know the size of the problem. And the manner in which the eligibility criteria kept on expanding without any reference to the fact that we don't have the supply of vaccines. First, it was elderlies, then it became those with above 60s, Then it became those 45 with comorbidities. And then suddenly on 20th, the states asked, and therefore we've said, okay, so plus 18. I think that was a little too casual. I cannot believe that they could make such a statement, because how do you furnish it? Right now, if you believe that vaccines have an impact, you must have, I'm told, at least 70% of the population must be vaccinated. And that alone requires a 1.3 billion vaccines, of which you've already got a target of plus 45 who have to be covered. And we've only covered how much? 12% of them. And so we still have a huge number still pending to cover. For that requires about 428 million doses.
12% with one dose. No, let's just go through the figures. We've covered 12% with one dose, and we've covered about 2% with both doses, which would be counted as fully vaccinated.
Plus 45 age group I'm talking about, okay? So we still have a huge 80% of those people to get the second dose, and the first dose also. Now this itself requires 428 million doses. And what is the production capacity? Till end July, the production of these two companies is going to be nothing more than 41 million by Serum, and about another, so about 82 million.
I must keep the conversation moving. Let me come on to Dr. Soin. As a medical practitioner, Dr. Soin, I see you always pushing for wider vaccination. Everyone is pushing for wider vaccination. Do you think, A, we missed the bus? B, what can we do now? At this pace, you're probably going to have a large part of the population unprotected for at least another year.
Tamanna, let me not get into what should have happened, because my esteemed colleagues have already discussed that. Let's now focus on what needs to be done. Let's be very clear. There is no way out of this pandemic except vaccinating at breakneck speed at least 50 or 60% of our population. Now, let's see, rather than just stick with the herd immunity figures of 60 to 70%, let's see what has happened in the UK and Israel. They are good examples, although the populations are much, much smaller. What has happened with UK is that they've vaccinated about 30% with 2 doses and about 50% with 1 or 2 doses. And what's happened with Israel is that they've got 60% overall and about 56% 2 doses. Now, if you extrapolate those numbers for the Indian population, then we need to vaccinate at least, we need to give 100 crore doses over the next 5 or 6 months. I mean, that may be tall order. We don't know where the vaccines will come from. We don't know the logistics, whether they'll work out, but that's what is needed. We need to vaccinate very quickly, very rapidly. So I believe about 100 crore doses need to go in the next 5 or 6 months, which is easily possible logistically. That means you need to have about 60,000, 70,000 centers, give 100 vaccination doses each day, and that'll mean that about 60 lakh doses go in every day. We've already done 50 lakh a couple of times, 50 lakhs a day. So about 60 lakhs a day at 60,000 centers in all, and that'll take us 5 or 6 months to administer 100 crore doses. Now, you've already read that the Pfizer CEO has said on LinkedIn that he's having conversations with the government of India to actually expedite the ordering of the vaccines. And we already know that 800 million have been secured for Novavax, another maybe 800 million for Sputnik. So it's not like there is no pipeline. There are vaccines in the pipeline. It just needs to be hastened. It just needs to happen quickly. And, I feel that at whatever cost, because that cost will still be less than losing millions of lives and landing up with a irreparably broken economy. So I think that whatever the cost, we must vaccinate with 100 crore doses over the next 6 months. That would be my plan.
No, So how are we going to get 100 crore doses in the next 6 months is really the question. Dr. Reddy, I want your view on this, and I like the take that, what has happened has happened. It does deserve to be seen very closely because we shouldn't repeat those mistakes. We should at least accept the mistakes that we've made. Only then can we start finding solutions. But having said that, how do we speed it up? The pie is only that large. And clearly Adar Poonawalla by himself cannot do it. He is saying that fairly openly.
I fully agree with Dr. Soin. We should try and acquire as much of the vaccine supply which is available globally, either because it is unused spare capacity, like, for example, the AstraZeneca vaccines which are lying in the US, but nobody is using them, or even the Johnson & Johnson vaccines which have less of an appeal now for some of the countries. Wherever they're available, we should try and acquire them. And of course, we must speed up the vaccine production of both Sputnik V in India as well as Novavax, and whatever we can do to enhance the domestic production also of whatever vaccines we have approved, we should do it. I believe we should cast the net wide and try and acquire as many vaccines as possible. We missed the opportunity when we could have bargained and got a very good price. But that doesn't mean we should now let go of the opportunity to acquire the vaccines and complete the job that is only partially done.
Can I also add another angle to this, Tamanna?
Yes.
So now that we are talking about acquiring more vaccines,
go ahead.
Now that we're talking about importing more vaccines apart from ramping up domestic capacity, we should now choose. We should choose the best ones, the most efficient ones. And the mRNA vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer, have proven to be the most efficacious. Sputnik is very highly efficacious, and so is Novavax. And I think we should concentrate on the next lot of vaccines that we need to acquire from abroad or from foreign companies have to be these four. Apart from that, of course, we've got Covishield and Covaxin within our own country. We've got Zydus coming up with the DNA vaccine. So I think that if we can speed up the acquisition and the manufacture of vaccines and then subsequently, go on the vaccination drive on a war footing, we can make it happen. We can get over the pandemic, but there is no other way.
There is no other way, absolutely. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the first leg of this debate, where our experts say that now that we seem to have missed the bus, we need to focus all our energies on acquiring as many vaccinations and doses as possible from the global market as well.